So, thank you. Hello, everybody. It's really a pleasure for me to be here and speak in front of you. I'm also happy to what I've seen in these 2 days of conference. Really happy because I've seen a certain alignment on the thoughts within this discipline. It looks like that we are all aligned, that we should provide light for people, light for social interactions, light for, for this specific topic. Oops, no, I just pressed the right, okay. So these are 3 main pillars that should be considered during planning an urban space. So analyzing the urban context, but also analyzing the people that are living in those contexts and their activities. And of course, take the positive things that innovative technologies can bring in our industries, in our design process, and use them as much as possible. It doesn't work anymore. Okay, maybe it takes a little bit of time. So I want to start from the past. I want to show you some example here of some city centers, historical city centers. This is Weimar, for Weimar, right? For instance, and other historical city centers. And as we can see, there is not a specific or precise structure of these cities. Of course, they were built in the past. And as we can see, mainly they were built around 2 body elements. So the first element was the feet that allowed people to walk linearly and go across the street, the city, and they built, I would say, they built streets to go across the urban space. The second body element is the eye. And for this reason, they built up some squares within the city where the people can stop, the people can look, the people can rest and socialize. Of course, these 2 elements were combined, and as we have seen before, this city structure was spontaneous. So people built their houses, their buildings spontaneously where they had a need. And of course, the light followed in the past. The light were placed where it was needed, where there was a need. An extreme example is just for your information, if you don't know it, in Venice we had a Codega, that is a figure, that is a character, that was a character that was handling the light. The name means the one who carries the light. And as you can see from this illustration, this is the Codega, and that's I would say, the most extreme example on how the light can follow the needs of those people here that wanted to go across Venice at night. So then we had the modern era. We start to plan our cities. We had architects, we had urban planners, and they start to plan cities on a paper and from a bird's eye view. Unfortunately, this kind of approach brought them to neglect completely the people scale that we had in the past, and we have seen it in the picture before. And so we had this kind of structure. So this is Barcelona, but we have also other examples that shows us really nice drawings on the paper, really nice view from the top, but unfortunately, the people scale was completely neglected. And here you see the contrast between a kind of more human scale area of a city and the more dinosaur scale, probably, in the background. Surveys shows up that people prefer to live definitely in such a space rather than in this one in the background. That's another example. So, again, pictures about the new areas of cities that are definitely not for people, so people are going across streets, but it's really risky, I would say. But they are definitely places for cars, for instance. This is a Brasilia, really nice on the paper. It looks like an eagle or an airplane, nice structure, really, really well organized. But the planners probably didn't plan to provide each citizen with an helicopter to move from one side to the other side of the city. As you can see here, if we have a closer look of the city center, we can see huge distances in between buildings. We can see really long and wide roads, huge spaces. Here in the middle, there is another interesting example. People started to draw their own path to their destination in order to reach this destination quicker. So these are, I would say, spontaneous walkways drawn by people that are leaving this place, that are not for people, but mainly for cars. And again, light followed. We had high-mast luminaires that tried to cover with really wide distributions as much as possible and to cover these long distances that has been planned. And of course, these pathways that are probably the most used by people are in the darkness, so they are not lit up at all. I want to highlight some quotes by Ludovica Scarpa. Ludovica Scarpa is a teacher in Venice. And it's interesting, this sentence, from my point of view: society is becoming anonymous in anonymous spaces that make anonymous people. So she believed that the design of a space, the design of an urban space, if we design it in an anonymous way, we are also influencing, we are affecting people in order for them to become anonymous as well. We have a big social problem, probably. And this is Kevin Lynch, a pretty well-known urban theorist and planner. So we must consider not just the city as a thing in itself, but the city being perceived by its inhabitants. So the idea of livable spaces in our urban areas is becoming more and more important. We know that nowadays the 50% of the world's population is living in urban areas, and by 2050 we will have 75%, and probably this percentage will increase more and more. But we should also know that there is an increase in the request of small individual housing units. So people are moving towards cities and they are requesting, they are living in small housing units. This brings people to extend their private areas outdoors. So they are living more and more the outdoor spaces, of course also at night. So we are seeing that there is an increase also of night activities, like going to the cinema or to the night market, as well as doing guided tours at night, sports activities, commuting. People are commuting 24 hours a day. And of course, there is a need for someone to get in contact with nature also at night. And this is really connected to the sentence I saw in the presentation of Professor Romild today. So the right for darkness. There are a lot of lighting planners already that are planning dark infrastructure within cities. And this is really, really important. Of course, not only because of we want to see the stars, but also for other ecological reasons. And we have this topic, so 24-hour cities, where the day and night transition is completely softened. There is no more a differentiation between the day and night under social aspect, under economical aspect, and so on. And we should take this into consideration. These are the 5 elements of Kevin Lynch regarding the urban structure, path, nodes, edges, district, and landmarks. My question is, why don't we think, and these elements are even more and more important, becoming more and more important also at night, because of the reason I told you before, like different nighttime activities. Why don't we think about also a lighting 5 elements of this structure, like orientation, delineation, identity, navigation, accentuation of landmarks, for instance. An example by Ian Gale and the city of New York. The idea was to give the people their urban environment back, day and night, of course. This is Broadway in New York. This is Macy's, and as you can see, this place is definitely not for people. It's for cars. People are just packed here on the right sidewalk. They are trying to cross the street here, and yeah, this was some years ago. Now they have closed this segment of Broadway, and they have dedicated this segment, so this part, to people. As you can see, people now can easily leave or chat or even attend a performing art. And that's now a place maybe more for people. But my question is, how can we downsize the lighting, so the street lighting that was planned for the cars in the past? How can we downsize the lighting system to the human scale? We cannot use anymore the same luminaires, the same lighting system that was used for cars. Now we have people. The main users here now are people. How can implement the livability of this place? Another example, still Broadway, before and after. You see a place for cars, a place for people. And another example I want to show you, just to talk about and focus on the scale of users. This is the High Line, still in Manhattan. I don't know if you've ever been here, but once you are walking through this really, really tight pathway, you can really feel the difference of scale between the place where you are living here and the surroundings, so these big and tall skyscrapers. So you can really perceive like being in a different place. So it's really matter of scale in this case. And the lighting, actually, it's really well following this scale. They have done a really great job in order to softly lighten this place, really low level, low scale for people. It's not dynamic anyway. And this is a quote from Ian Gale, so a well-known, it's already well mentioned during this conference, urban planner. He's talking about the importance of physical quality of the city space, but what is interesting also for us, for lighting designer or lighting expert, is that he's talking also about visual quality. Of course, he was mentioning daylight and night time, but for us it's important that also other disciplines are taking care about the visual quality. And of course, the lighting approach we should have is a multidisciplinary approach, always talking with different stakeholders, with different disciplines like urban planning, as well as architecture, landscape architects, and so on, sociologists, psychologists, and so on. So here are the questions. How can we translate, in lighting terms, the human scale in urban planning? Could we talk about human scale lighting? I want to make a just little game. If you have a kind of telephone conversation and you hear, so the conversation is disturbed, and you hear only this sentence, so D, to, and you probably don't understand what the speaker wanted to say. So you have no idea what he wanted to say. If you hear instead these words, so I'm away, dinner, call later, maybe you can guess which is the meaning of the call, which is the meaning of this conversation. Why? Because in the first example, you heard only words that are pretty common. They are really common words, and they do not provide you information. In the second sentence, you hear less common words that are providing more information than the first ones. So it's about information. If you think that the complete sentence, so I'm on the way to dinner and I'll call you later, is the daylight situation of a specific urban place, we can get the full spectrum of information out of this place. We understand the place. We are interested maybe in some details, in some objects out of these visuals. So while planning the night, of course we cannot replace the sun. We cannot provide a full spectrum of information by just some information. If we approach the space with a really flat illumination and focus, we are focused with light on the common words, so on the common parts of this space, like only the ground, we are going to provide few information to the user, and therefore we are going to provide a less interesting light rooms, a less interesting urban space at night. But then if we are going to highlight some specific details, we are going to pick up the identity that are creating, the objects that are creating identity out of this space, maybe we are providing more information to the user, and we are going to raise up the interest of this place also at night. So instead of people walking through this space because it is not interesting at all and going back home directly, they can stay, they can rest, they can socialize. So we can also improve the social life of this place eventually. So that is coming from the human scale lighting approach, so meeting human needs and tailoring the light around the human activities, creating interesting outdoor places at night, so again focusing on the right objects, and turning anonymous spaces into places with specific identity. This is just a rough example. This was just a bridge in a city in Austria. It was mainly a bridge for cars. People didn't recognize this an identity place as an interesting place. They just passed by and that's all. What they have done, of course, with a multidisciplinary approach, so working with architects and urban planners and lighting designers, they have created a space for people. So it's not only a bridge, a car bridge, but it's also a place where people can stay, can rest, can have a look at the river and appreciate the identity of this space. So just to summarize, we should analyze the context always, analyze the urban context, analyze the architecture and so on, but we should also consider the user of this place. We should consider people and their activities that are taking place and the different activities that can take place in different nighttime periods. Just making again another sketch example. If we take this square with the park in the middle and maybe a railway station here on the right, early evening we have people maybe enjoying the park and just relaxing after work, so we can create with light a more vibrant situation that can provide horizontal and vertical illumination on the trees, on the fountain in the middle, and create a more crispy environment with a kind of lighting frame all around in order to reduce the contrast of luminances, for instance. Middle of the night, few people are there, someone is just passing by, someone is just in front of the train station, and someone maybe wanted to get in contact with nature, want to see the sky or stay in the darkness. A possible adaptive solution and dynamic, this is related to the dynamic solution, is to have a more security lighting, general illumination in front of the train station, but also an adaptive lighting that is, I would say, guiding the people that are just passing by, and few lights, so dimmed light in general, still with some few vertical illumination just to provide still a little bit of orientation in the space, and that's all. Early morning, we can have commuters going to and from the train station, so maybe here a more guidance effect is needed through this main pathway, and of course also a little bit of dynamic lighting that can improve this place to be turned in from a known place as a station is to a place for people or social interaction. So the challenge is, of course, to use the light and to consider the light as part of the built environment, and to use it in order to reflect human dynamics. So it's really, I would say, important to consider the light as it is part of the built environment. As urban planners are using benches, are using trees, are using walls in order to shape the environment, we can also consider light as one of these tools at night, of course, in order to create an identity, to create the light room. And of course, the use of technology is also important, innovative technology, especially in the company I'm working, we are developing and we are always focused on the most innovative technology we can use on the market. Usually, while we are developing any kind of luminaires, any kind of lighting project, we think about having a flexible modularity. So considering one module and then multiply it as you wish, it allows us to, and designers, to adapt the light around the space and customize, I would say, the light in every single space. So this is an example for this luminaire, for instance, where the single module we use is a lighting tube, so a single lighting tube, and then we created a system. So this system can be composed by different single rotational symmetric light distribution, and at the end you can compose the head of this pole, for instance, with different number of tubes, different optics, and different directions in order to create your own light distribution, in order to adapt the light distribution to the environment you are working in. And this is an example we have realized on the Austrian Alps in Lech. This is a picture I really like because out of this luminaire we are providing functional lighting on the street, so fulfilling the regulation, of course. But on the back of this luminaire you see further tubes, so further modules that are illuminating in a vertical approach, in this case the riverbed here. And what is also interesting is that some of these tubes are focusing on the stones that are coming out of the water, and really the experience you have, not from this picture, but if you're there live, it's really impressive. So it's really nice to see the stones coming out of the river. So miniaturization and precision is also another topic that is really, really important in this human scale lighting topic, because it really brings the light to different dimension and different perception. Of course, we can also talk about multifunctional lighting fixture, implementing these columns with other devices that they don't have anything to deal with lighting. But what I believe is interesting is really to have multifunctional luminaires that can provide more than one function of lighting, not only different devices, but different function out of the luminaires. Here is another example in Austria, in Graz, the Volksgarten. We use the same system, but with different devices. Usually during the night or the early evening, the pathway is illuminated with the 50% of the lumen output out of this lumina, just to fulfill the regulations. At night, where there is no presence of people, the light is reduced at 20%. When there is a presence, it goes up again at 50%. What is interesting is that we use the 50% more missing for this noise noise detection. So there is a sensor inside. It is a noise detection sensor that is detecting screamings or shoutings for, I don't know, violent people or drunk people or whatever. The light is growing up, so the lumen output is growing up to 100% in order to glare these people, in order to send them away, in order to create an attractive point for the police guys that are walking around. And furthermore, this device is also sending an input, sending a message to the nearest police station in order to say there is something wrong in this area. Last point, it's just a graphic, but it's just to show you how could work this multifunctional luminaire. Here we have, could be a facade or a wall, some urban objects. We have these yellow luminaires that are 6 tubes, so 6 modules, again, with an elliptical lens in order to graze the facade. The green one in the middle, it's 5 rows of 6 tubes. As you can see here, the scheme. Each row has a rotational symmetric optic with different directions, so with 4 different directions each row. And the last one has the same optic as the 6-tube luminaire, same elliptical effect on the facade. And this is really short video that should work and is no, it's gone. Can you check if it is? Anybody's not? Okay. Okay, it doesn't work. Okay, maybe I have. It just to show you, possibilities. Just playing the video. It was to show you more function out of one system, out of one luminaire, where the middle luminaire can provide, of course, a grazing effect like all the others luminaires, but it can also show, as you can see here, we have the side luminaires for grazing the wall. And in the middle, we have, again, kind of uniformity for grazing, thanks to the 6-tube with elliptical beam as the others. But also, you can also have dynamic or static situation that can focus on different objects in the nearby if you have a more social area in front of the building or in the square, and so on. So this is more or less what I wanted to show you. Can go back. Presentation. And it's the last slide. So just to summarize, I want to say that by reducing the scale of urban lighting, we can raise the quality of life in urban environments that have been designed by humans and that have to be designed for humans. This is what I want to say. Hope you enjoyed the presentation. A big thank you, and thank you.